In a time of ancient gods, warlords, and kings, a land in turmoil cried out for a hero. She was Xena, a mighty princess forged in the heat of battle. The power, the passion, the danger. Her courage will change the world.
Xena, Warrior Princess. Hello, I am the many-talented Mr. Jefferson, and today I'm here to talk about one of the new tables in the Universal TV Classic Pinball Pack. This pack includes Knight Rider and Battlestar Galactica and released alongside the standalone tables Pacific Rim and Super League Football. The Universal TV Classics pack costs $14.99, Pacific Rim costs $5.49, and Super League Football was free on consoles for 10 days after launch and the first 30 days on Steam or Epic if you're part of that PC master race. Most likely, by the time you see this video, it will not be free anymore. This is part 2 of a 5-part series covering all of these new tables, and the table we're looking at today is Xena, Warrior Princess from the Universal TV Classics pack. Before I get to the rest of the video, I want to address the game settings for Pinball FX. I had seen an early video by Crow Continuum who got early access to the table, and he was complaining about the super hungry outlanes and a montage of the ball getting sucked into the drain, usually after hitting the slingshots. And his high score was terrible for a player who can reliably hit wizard modes. I know he plays at a higher level than I do. I had a feeling I knew what the problem was, and I was lucky enough to catch him during a live stream where I asked him to turn off VSync and run the game at an unlimited frame rate because I believe ball physics are connected to the frame rate, and artificially restricting the frame rate was doing really weird things to the physics sometimes. His frame rate shot up to 200 after making these changes, and it appears to have helped make the table a little bit more playable. He had assumed the table needed to be adjusted, but he was able to get 4 times his previous high score after making these changes I suggested, and if you're having weird bounces or the slingshots always seem to just hit those outlanes, you might want to mess around with your VSync and uncap the frame rate. Pinball FX did just roll out a new update to the UI, and my personal user settings switched back to default. So if your game has started playing a little bit differently than you're used to, this might be the problem. And I would also highly recommend playing this table on realistic physics. One of the shots is really difficult to make with normal physics. Now, back to the table. Xena was a minor character who appeared in the first season of Hercules: The Legendary Journeys in a 3-episode story arc, with the last episode capping off the first season finale. In the finale, Xena was supposed to die, but the studio noticed she had become an incredibly popular character and wound up spinning her off into her own series. She starts off as a brutal warlord hell-bent on killing Hercules, but at the end of her 3 episodes, she goes through a redemption arc which continues as the main premise of her own show, and she travels around trying to make up for her dark past and picks up the blonde tag-along, Gabrielle, in the first episode, who contrasts Xena's jaded demeanor with her good nature and naivety. Other members to join the cast were the inept Jockster the Mighty, played by Sam Raimi, the director of Evil Dead, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and of course, Hercules and Xena. Rounding out the cast is Callisto, who serves as a major series antagonist and serves as a mirror for what Xena might have become had she not reformed. Callisto can be described as crazy hot, and in that exact order. And she just gets crazier and hotter every time she shows back up. It's not really necessary to watch the show to understand the table. Xena, at its core, is a stunt show utilizing a lot of wire fu, known for over-the-top action interrupted by the occasional quip. Xena's signature weapon is her chakram, which she can rebound off objects to attack at odd angles, and the weapon will return to her hand. It's basically the outer rim of Captain America's shield, but also with the powers of Thor's hammer. And it can cut through anything. Xena, Warrior Princess went on for 6 seasons and was very well received and had many notable performers appear in recurring roles, such as Bruce Campbell from the Evil Dead movies, and Lucy Lawless went on to perform in many fantastic shows like Spartacus, Parks and Rec, as an antagonist in Ash vs. Evil Dead, and that's not bad for a relatively unknown actress who was 6th in line to play Xena in that initial episode. Yes, someone had to get sick, and then 4 other someones had to turn down the role so that Lucy Lawless could get her big break and her own TV series, and then go on to become one of the most iconic and beloved actors of all time. And on top of that, she also met her husband working on Xena. He was the co-creator of the series, and now she's finally found some real success because she has her very own pinball table, which is clearly the greatest achievement one can accomplish, the very pinnacle of one's own career. I think, maybe. I might be wrong. Well, that's the background of the show, but you're probably here to learn about the table, so let's start by looking at the flippers the way we do. We have a very simple and standard lower table, nothing too complicated here. We have 2 standard flippers with 4 lanes. We have 2 out lanes with kickback and 2 in lanes with habit trails leading to the rollovers, making rollover management fairly easy. You can move the lit lane by using the flippers as per most tables, but that's about it for the bottom of the table. These lights deactivate, so make sure to manage your rollovers. Spelling out fate with the rollovers raises the bonus multiplier. In the middle of the playfield is Xena, staring ahead like you just made the biggest mistake of your life. She is framed in fire and encircled by one of her chakram. Above her are the 7 main modes of the table that must be defeated to reach the wizard mode. In keeping with the table's theme, these missions are balanced. 3 represent villains, 3 represent allies, and Xena stands in the middle balancing the light and dark. The 7 modes are Ares, Joxer, Gabby, Xena, Callisto, Caesar, and Alti. You might be confused about Ares being an ally, but he is a god and he's an anti-hero for the show. And he's sometimes an adversary to Xena, but he's not like outright evil. He tutored Xena, he gave her her signature weapon, and he repeatedly tries to marry or seduce Xena during the show, putting him into the unwanted ally category more than a villain, much like Joxer, who wanted to be a villain but was too big of a putz and too genuinely decent of a person to actually pull it off. Looking at the table features, up the left side of the table you have the Tavern Sinkhole. Visit the Tavern Sinkhole 3 times to meet with Joxer to start his main mode. I will discuss main modes at the end of the table description. There's a lot going on these modes. The tavern also starts the Tavern Trouble side mode after only 2 hits. This mode is very easy and rewards kickback, and since the outlanes on this table are particularly brutal, this shot should be your best friend. Above the tavern is the Alti ramp and sinkhole. This is where you start the Alti main mode, Alti Vision of Pain. This is a relatively easy shot to make, unlike the ramp to the right of the Alti orbit. That would be the left chakram orbit ramp leading up to the double chakram spinning toy. This is one of the orbits that will start the Callisto main mode. The orbit feels very anemic when playing on normal physics. I very highly suggest changing this table to realistic physics for a couple of reasons. First, with normal physics, you wind up with issues like the anemic shot, and the same exact thing happens with one of the left orbits on Pacific Rim, and again, changing to realistic physics will fix the problem on that table too. The shot goes up the ramp smooth as butter every single time on both tables with realistic physics. Another reason to start playing with realistic physics is so that you get used to it. It's not really harder, it's just different. Classic mode smooths out the ball physics to more closely match Pinball FX3, but the ball is not as bouncy, and I believe this is why I've heard complaints that the ball feels kind of floaty in FX. That's probably because anybody who's playing has not changed the table to realistic physics yet. Classic physics aren't easier. The problem there is you're actually teaching yourself to play better with bad physics, which is going to make it a lot harder to adapt to the better physics model because the ball just won't react the way that you expect it to, and your reflexes will be severely off when you change the modes. One thing that can really help with this shot is just getting that chakram spinning. The chakram will loop the ball around as many times as the number of your last highest combo, which will help you avoid having to even hit the left chakram ramp to start the Callisto mode. The ball will loop around and hit the trigger for you. To the right of the left chakram ramp is the Village Inner Orbit. This is where you start the Reunited Multi-Ball side mode when the lock is lit. This orbit will exit out into the Ion Caves if you are playing a mode that requires hits on the bumper. This is a good way to get there. To the right of that is the centerpiece of the table, which has several targets and even contains a hidden target, which you need to start the Ares main mode. There is an awful lot happening here, and the centerpiece gives access to several main modes and is crucial to beating Callisto. To start off, there is a target on either side of the centerpiece. Lighting both of those targets will activate a ball lock in the village orbit, which is to the left of the centerpiece. And that is used to start the very desirable Reunited Multi-Ball mode. Next to the targets is the inner loop, which is used to start Gabriel's journey. And it is also used to defeat Callisto. And in the very center is another target, which is used to either beat or lose the Callisto mode, depending on how far you've progressed. It will do both. I will explain that in more detail later. This target is also used to summon the moving chakram target, which is used to start the Ares God of War main mode. Again, I'll be discussing all of the main modes in more detail later, because a couple of them are a little bit more complex and require hitting multiple shots on lanes I still haven't mentioned yet, which is why I'm just going to save it all to the end. To the left of the centerpiece is the entrance to the Ion Caves, which houses 3 bumpers, a sinkhole, and the upper right flipper. The bumpers can be used to start a hurry-up mode where you guessed it, hit more bumpers for a bonus score. How exciting! The Ion Cave sinkhole will hand out random rewards when hit just a couple of times, and will occasionally lock the ball as one of the 3 ball locks for the Lost in Caves multi-ball. To the left of that is the right chakram orbit ramp, which is also used to get the attention of Callisto for the Callisto's Revenge main mode. Of the 2 ramps that access the chakram toy, this is by far the easier one to hit. Just aim for the outer right orbit and you will hit the chakram like 99% of the time instead, because that orbit is the hardest shot on the table to make. That's right, we're already talking about it. To the right of the right chakram orbit is the balance right outer orbit. You hit this orbit to access the Xena balanced chakram mini table. To balance the chakram, shoot the right orbit 4 times to access the mini table, then shoot the dark caves and the light caves an equal number of times. When you do it correctly, you will gain access to an altar at the center, which will complete the mini table. And it will award you with a ball that scores double points until the current ball ends. That ball can hit the drain as long as you still have ball save active, and you will not lose the bonus. I believe this shot is absolutely the hardest lane on the table to hit on purpose. There is a very, very narrow opening to hit this ramp, which is why I shoot on it anytime I have the ball on the left flipper. and I'm not playing any specific modes. Usually the ball will either shoot straight up the chakram ramp, making it really easy to start the Callisto mode, or the ball will either brick off the top of the Centurion target without actually hitting the target itself, or it will hit the target squarely. Speaking of that, let me introduce you to the final target on the table, Caesar's Legionnaires. The Legionnaires have 2 shields, hit it twice to drop those shields, and then a third hit to the target will summon Caesar's Legion for this Caesar Roman Assault main mode. Finally, that brings us back around to the very first shot on the table, and that is a skill shot. To hit the skill shot, shoot the ball through the chakram pop-up target before the timer runs out. Don't try to hit the chakram with the ball launcher. It will never happen, and when I say it will never happen, I mean I have actually done it that way once, and it was a complete fluke. Use the plunger strength to pick which flipper you want to use to shoot the ball at the chakram. Hitting the center of the chakram awards the points for the skill shot, and you have time to take several shots on the target if the ball does go straight back to the flippers. Again, you have an icicle's chance in hell of hitting the chakram target using the plunger, and the only way I managed to do that one time is because I had realistic physics turned on and I managed to catch the inner edge of the toy, which deflected the ball ever so slightly upward, just enough to count as a hit into the center, even though it did not pass through the target. I would not even attempt to recreate this again. It is just so much easier to hit the target with the flippers. Now that I've gone over all of the parts of the table, it is time to review the main modes, and the wizard mode, and then the side modes. I will probably repeat some of the information I stated earlier, but for the sake of completion, I want all of the information on how to start the modes and how to beat them listed in the order they appear on the table, starting with Ares, God of War. Shoot the middle target to turn on the chakram pop-up target and hit the center of the chakram 3 times. A wall of purple flame will appear in front of the right ramps. Shoot one of the left orbits to break the barrier from behind, and then shoot the ion crystal bumpers to stop the ritual. The next mode up is Joxer the Mighty. Start Joxer the Mighty by hitting the tavern sinkholes 3 times. 2 pop-up targets will block the chakram ramps. Shoot the chakram ramps 2 times each after knocking down the bandit drop targets to complete the mode. The bandit drop targets will reappear if you take too long. This is easily the second hardest main mode to complete because it uses the left chakram ramp. With normal physics, this shot is very anemic and you need to hit the drop target before you can even make a shot on the ramp, only to see the ball either get rejected from the ramp or fail to reach the rollover at the top of the chakram, meaning the shot still won't count. And then the pop-up will reset and you have to make 2 more back-to-back shots on the same ramp again to get the counter to go up by 1. And you need to do it twice. With realistic physics, the ball goes up the ramp smooth as butter, but the same ramp is still much harder to hit. The timing to hit that specific ramp is much tighter than on normal physics, and I'm not used to playing with the realistic physics yet, which presents more of an issue for me. But I haven't seen this ramp reject the ball on realistic physics when I do hit it, which is a hell of an improvement. The next main mode is Gabrielle's Journey. Shoot the square of the village 3 times from each direction to start this mode. Visit all of the lanes with Gabrielle. During your journey, marauders will attack the village and are located at the center loop and must be defeated to continue on. The mode in the middle is Xena, Balanced Chakram. Hit the right orbit 4 times to access the mini table. This is the most pain in the ass shot on the table, so try not to screw up when you get to the mini table. The mini table has red orbits and white orbits representing the dark and the light. Hitting them an equal number of times to balance the chakram will raise an altar. Hit that altar when it appears to complete the fusion. Completing the mini table will reward you with a balanced chakram ball, which will score double points. The next mode is Callisto. Shoot each ramp 3 times to fight Callisto. To defeat her, you must balance on the ladder first. Shoot the lit mini loop to adjust your position on the ladder and avoid shooting the middle target because you will lose your balance. Once Xena is balanced, Callisto appears, and that's when you shoot the middle target to defeat her. The next mode is Caesar's Roman Assault. Hit the Roman officer behind the 2 guards to activate Caesar's Legion, and keep hitting those drop targets until you locate the real Caesar. The guards will regain their shields after a while, so don't count on starting this mode accidentally. Caesar is located at the top of one of the outer loops, which means you can sneak attack him if you open up the opposite loop, which is very useful if he shows up in the balance loop, since the ulti loop is much easier to hit. You also have just enough time to shoot the ball up the orbit before Caesar pops up, meaning you could actually beat this particular main mode in one shot if you're really lucky. The final main mode is Ulti Visions of Pain. Hit the left orbit 4 times to find Ulti, and then defeat her by shooting the drop targets while avoiding the moving haunting visions, which will teleport the ball somewhere else, which can be very unpredictable or just flat out drain the ball if you're very unlucky. The target can be hard to see, but they do appear in the inner and outer loops. If you're not sure where she is, just aim for those loops and remember that the left orbit will return to the right side because the right orbit is the much harder shot to make. The same is true of the left village orbit, which will pop the ball out in the Ion Cave, where it has a very good chance of hitting Ulti if she shows up over there. With all those main modes completed, that leads us to the Wizard mode. The Wizard mode gets lit on the ramps when all 7 modes are completed. Not attempted like on many other tables, I mean completed. Xena's adversaries team up for one final showdown. Ulti shows up and creates portals, while Caesar's Legion flood the field once again, commanded by Caesar, and Callisto shows up, presumably to snarl and act like the crazy, immortal, death-obsessed bitch that she has become over the course of the show. She doesn't seem to do much else besides provide another boss target. After you hit all of the boss targets, the jackpot lanes will light up. Now to discuss the side modes. Lost in the Caves Multi-Ball. Shooting the orbits can randomly cause ball locks and the occasional innuendo as characters get lost in the caves. After 3 balls are locked, multi-ball starts automatically. You can lock the balls again by hitting the orbits to increase the jackpot, but this will also take away the ball. The reunited multi-ball is started by shooting the 2 targets on either side of the mini loop in the center of the table to light the lock in the village orbit. You lock balls by shooting them into the village to the left of the centerpiece. 3 ball locks start the multi-ball, where you shoot lit lanes for jackpots, and the chakram target also activates, and shooting it lights a random jackpot lane. Hitting the chakram again when all of the lanes are lit will award a super jackpot. This mode is responsible for my current high score. I managed to hit the chakram a crazy number of times, sometimes with both balls colliding in the center and causing multiple rewards to trigger back to back to back. I didn't even know this mode existed when I first hit it. I had just found out about the 2-time scoring from Balanced Chakram, and I was attempting to collect that when I accidentally played my best game on the table so far, and I was so focused on keeping the balls alive that I couldn't read the heads up display at all. I really like the chakra moving target. It's very basic, but unlike most solid targets, the ball will pass through if you get a bullseye, and it will continue through to hit other targets and ramps instead of just harshly rebounding towards the drain. The chakram can be a nuisance if you're trying to hit a specific shot because it can block lanes, but if it's on the table, it's because you summoned it by hitting that middle target, and the reunited multi-ball makes amazing use of the chakra moving target. It's just really fun to shoot on. Scouts of the Legion side mode. Hitting the Roman officer behind the 2 Roman scout guards multiplies all scores for a limited time. Problematic Patron Kickback Awards. Hit the tavern twice to meet the problematic patron. Hit the drop target to free the tavern. Each hit activates a kickback as a reward. Kickbacks may be the single most valuable reward on this table because the outlanes are very, very, very hungry, just like Gragas. Holy shit, I managed to work in a Gragas reference. I'm kind of proud of myself. The Chakram Spin Combo. The raised twin chakram will loop the ball around the infinity loop a predetermined number of times, which may sound disappointing, but the player actually controls how many times the ball will loop, and that's because it's based off of combo shots. Shoot the ramps and mini loops for combos. Once a combo chain is finished, the chakram will start spinning, and hitting the ramps again will cause the ball to loop as many times as the last highest combo. Not the last combo, the last highest combo. This toy will reset until you shoot another combo. Extra balls. You can get an extra ball as a random award by getting one more than a 10 times combo, so watch those rollovers. By completing 3 companion main modes, complete 3 boss fight main modes, or by completing just the Xena Balance Chakra mode, because I'm telling you, that is the hardest mode on the table. And you can tell it's the hardest shot on the table because it is the table reward. The Crystals mode. Something happens when you hit the crystals enough times. It starts a hurry up to hit more crystals. A very typical bumper thing to do. The Ion Crystal Cave. This is located just above the flipper in the crystal cavern, and hitting it will give a random reward after repeated shots. And that is the table. I don't feel like Xena is the most anticipated table in the pack for most people. That would definitely be Knight Rider, which is why that is going to be the third video. I want to build it up because it's fucking awesome, but I am totally enamored with the Xena Warrior Princess table. The audio sounds like it is pulled straight out of the show and has even been cleaned up a little bit to remove odd background sounds that would have been in the background of these shots. And it's exactly what I would have loved to see happen with the Deep Space Nine table, which is still one of my favorite shows that I constantly rewatch to this day. Xena was a silly action show, but I feel like it's better than Hercules was, and that's because Xena's character development started in Hercules, and also because Xena wasn't part god, so she didn't tend to face as many terribly animated monsters as Hercules did. Remember when I mentioned Gragas? Gragas is Ares' dog, and he appears in the 2-part series finale of Hercules, where Xena was supposed to die and then be resurrected and then at the end be eaten by Gragas. But because she had been introduced much earlier in the season, fans had a chance to react to her, so instead of that plot, she winds up getting betrayed by one of her lieutenants, who fills the role she would have played, and he gets eaten instead. But the point being that Gragas would have looked more at home in a PlayStation 2 game than on television. I also want to point out that the guy who got eaten by Gragas in that episode looks almost exactly like Evil Ash from Army of Darkness, and the costume may very well have been reused. Wait, did Army of Darkness only take place in the Middle Ages because Sam Raimi needed a bunch of medieval shit because he was getting ready to make Hercules? That's almost as ridiculous as claiming that Xena is really strong because she's actually a Cylon. I mean, it would be pretty silly to suggest that there is an ancient humanoid Cylon roaming the Earth. That would be as crazy as suggesting that Kit from Knight Rider is an early Cylon because of his artificial intelligence. But then again, he does have those swooshing red lights, and the previous model car really loved killing humans. I feel like I should have probably watched Battlestar Galactica. Xena is a really cool new table. I think it's a lot of fun, just like the show it's based on. The table includes some of the most memorable parts of the show across several seasons, and somehow works into themes of balance and self-acceptance, and it's one of the first television shows to star a same-sex couple. Xena started in 1995, which is the same year Deep Space Nine featured a same-sex kiss between Jadzia Dax and the actress who played the Borg Queen on Voyager, which was a really big deal at the time. Xena and Gabrielle did not start off as a couple or with any real intention of making them a romantic couple. Gabrielle's innocence was there to balance out Xena's jaded cynicism and act as the comedy relief, but their relationship grew naturally over the course of the show as they came to rely on each other more and more, And as their friendship and trust grew, and a romantic relationship just seemed to be the natural evolution of what went on to become iconic characters. Beyond that, Xena also went on to prove just how much television lacks strong female leads alongside Deep Space Nine, which had the badass former terrorist Kira Nerys acting as first officer under Commander Sisko, and Commander Ivanova from Babylon 5 was also a total badass female lead. Xena might have been a goofy action stunt show, but at its core it became much more than that, and it's special for a lot of different reasons. I'm really happy that the pinball table is so good, because it might spike interest in the TV show, which first aired almost 30 years ago. Wait, it's been 30 years? Fuck, I'm old. Anyway, I have reviewed the Battlestar Galactica table from 20 years ago. Son of a bitch. That's 20 years old? God damn it. I'll be back to review the final table in the pack based on another TV stunt show I loved to watch when it first aired, Knight Rider, which came out in, oh fuck me, 1982? It's over 40 years old? I feel like I should just start sleeping in an open grave at this point. I am the many-talented Mr. Jefferson, and while writing this, I hit 6th place on the leaderboards for Xena Warrior Princess, so I must be doing something right. I will be starting a podcast soon with 2 other new players, Cuddly Dragon, who is totally new to pinball, and Fantavision, who is a casual fan who recently got addicted because he now has a group to compete with. I have been coaching both of them on the table mechanics and even some of those basic skills, and isn't that what Xena Warrior Princess is all about? Friends coming together? Xena, the show, is much better than I remembered. It's a highly silly acrobatic stunt show, but it has some fantastic moments, like when they did a clip show 13 episodes in, framing it as a bardic contest. Usually a clip show is an excuse to fill time when you have a budget gap and really can't afford to shoot a full episode, like that one awful Riker episode in the 2nd season of Star Trek The Next Generation. But this episode of Xena, they didn't just flash back to episodes of Xena and Hercules. One of the overly enthusiastic contestants would tell his stories with a lot of emphatic gestures, and the clips from his stories were from the old Steve Reeves Hercules movies, which is just a really clever way to make a clip show a lot more entertaining, while also showcasing the cinematic history of the character, complete with the 1950s era robber monsters. And the episode ends with another contestant telling the story of Spartacus, complete with footage from the 1960s movies, and the table is much like this surprisingly good clip show. It contains the highlights of the series, retelling the story in an interesting way to captivate the audience all over again. The outlanes in this table might be super hungry, and the left chakram ramp may be a little too steep, but overall, I love this table, and I know I will eventually hit the wizard mode, because the only thing I have not finished on this table was balancing the chakram. But I want to do it really bad, and if I just keep shooting on the Legion, I can usually hit this mini table lane when I miss, and I'm accessing the mini table a little bit more frequently now, so it's just a matter of time. I'll be back with the 3rd table review, which I kept for last because it's my favorite table in the pack, and it's becoming one of my favorite tables, period. End of story. We reviewed Battlestar Galactica. I just showed you how to dominate Xena, and next up is a shadowy flight into the world of a man who does not exist. Holy shit, it's the Knight Rider table, and it's everything I could have hoped for. I would like to thank my viewers, my subscribers, my channel members, and everybody who hit that thumbs up button. I would also like to give an extra special thanks to my sponsors who have gone above and beyond in supporting the channel. They are the reason I have full access to the library of Pinball FX tables. I am not sponsored by Zen Studios. I do not have a magical all-access pass to the tables, nor do I get to see the tables early, which, to be honest, would be pretty freaking cool. I am making these reviews because I really like Pinball FX. I enjoy researching the tables, and it massively improves my game, as I didn't even start playing Pinball FX until August of 2023, and honestly, It's been really good for my channel. I've seen more viewership and new subscribers from my pinball videos than literally anything else I have ever done on this channel, except for that one MechWarrior 5 review that just keeps dominating my channel views because people fucking love that game. I'll be back to review the Pacific Rim table next, and I will be working on creating that podcast with the 2 other streamers who are still pretty new to pinball, Cuddly being totally new, though he has been using my guides to beat my scores and keep me on my toes, and Fantavision, who is a longtime casual fan of pinball who is now addicted because I was able to kick his ass on every table, and now I'm in the position to teach him some of the basics of ball handling that have allowed me to outright crush some of his scores on most tables. But I expect with a little bit of guidance, his games will improve significantly, and he'll be able to compete on the same level as the rest of the group. And if Cuddly is learning enough about how the tables work to beat me while Fantavision is improving his base skill level, it will be evidence that I am doing something right with these table reviews and guides. So just keep watching along as I work my way through 130 tables currently available in Pinball FX and Pinball M. I might as well say 131 because we know Texas Chainsaw Massacre is coming right around the corner, but we don't know if they have any other surprises in store for us when that table launches. Which they might, because Pinball M only has 5 tables, and I expect that expanding the library of that game is a priority. I'll see you next time at the Knight Rider table. Until then, toodles!
In the blink of an eye, I can split the skull of anyone who moves with my trusty. In the blink of an eye, I can split the skull of anyone who moves with my trusty Shamrock.